From across the comic book community multiverse, the Comic-Con podcast begins now with your hosts, Justin, aka Nemesis Prime. If you give them the title of influencer, then that's giving them more power, right? That's how it is. Like, I'm a nobody. Listen, I'm a nobody. Zach, aka the Manimal.
We talked about it for a full, I believe, 7 to 8 minutes on an hour-long normal podcast for a show. And you would have thought we set their house on fire with the backlash.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Comic-Con podcast, season 3, episode 3, recording this on January 19th, 2023. It's your boy, Nemesis Prime. You all know what's going on. Zach is not with us at the moment. He is somewhere out in the multiverse, but he may pop in. We're not sure. But with that being said, we have an awesome show for you today. I have two creators. We got a writer and an artist here on this week's show. Hopefully, if you have not checked it out, we have had one of these guys on. He's actually been one of my co-hosts one time, and he's been on the show several times. We got our man, Marion, artist for several different projects, and we have Chad Larrson, creator of Deathshroud, and we're going to be talking about Deathshroud a lot tonight. So, gentlemen, welcome to the show. Chad, first time. How are you?
I'm doing good, and thanks, Justin, for having us. I'm excited.
Absolutely. And Ken, what is this, like your third, fourth time on here, I think?
Yeah, I think so.
You were kind of, the last time you were on here, you were engaged, and now you're married. So things have been moving along as you join the podcast in your personal life.
Yeah. It's been going good, going really good. Yeah, things have been a whirlwind the last month or so. But yeah, thank you so much for having us on, man. We're so excited to be here and chat with you. Yeah.
So last time that you were on, Ken, was just around, the October. We were talking about New York Comic-Con. We were talking about Deathshroud coming out. That's the main project. That's the main thing that we're here talking about here on the podcast this week. So most people know Ken, but Ken, why don't you give us kind of like a refresher of, who you are, what you've done, and then we'll hit up Chad, because Chad's new to the podcast, and I know I really want to learn about his background because there's some good stuff in there.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So super briefly, my name is Marion. I'm an artist for comic book artist for 10 years now. I've been done a ton of work at Aspen Comics, DC Comics, Green Lantern, Trinity, Batman, Superman, Titans, like pretty much you name it. I worked on it in somewhere, Aquaman. For the last couple of years, I've been working with Chad here with our new company, Dream Key Comics. I'm working on Deathshroud, which is this new IP that we're super excited about, and we'll get into it really soon. So, I'm happy to be here, and can't wait to talk to you all about all this.
Awesome. And Chad, so new to the podcast. Definitely, I definitely want to hear a little bit about you. Obviously you're creator, owner, done a lot of things. So give your quick overview of who you are here in the community.
Yeah, sure. So my background isn't comics. I come from the esports gaming side of things. So I've kind of been an entrepreneur in that side for about a decade. And I founded two companies. One was called Pro Gaming League, which we actually ended up taking public on the TSXV, which is the Toronto Stock Exchange venture, and a Team Reciprocity, which was an esports team where we fielded a variety of top teams and championship winning teams, mind you. We ended up selling that company to a company called GameSquare, which is also publicly traded. During that time, I did work on some cool projects. So I worked for brands like Microsoft on the Halo Championship Series, Nintendo, and Ubisoft. And I was actually, little fun fact, I was actually the very first person to work with the Pro Player Ninja. And we launched Pro Gaming League on the back of him. And he started his career as a pro player in Halo specifically. And that's kind of my background. And that's how we kind of had that relationship. So that's kind of a cool thing.
Now, I'm sure you're still a gamer. Are you still playing a lot of Halo? Like, what's your current game right now that's your go-to?
Yes, I actually still, because I've invested so much time into Halo, playing since 2001, Halo Combat Evolved, I actually still play Halo. I'm still really good at the game. I'm an Onyx level player, as I'll beat my chest to that. But that Elden Ring is kind of like the last big IP that I've been playing.
Awesome. Yeah. I've been a gamer. I'm definitely a gamer before a comic guy. So, having both you and Ken on here and, learning about Dream Key Comics and especially Deathshroud tonight, it's definitely going to be a great time. So, again, like I said, and you said you're the entrepreneur of Dream Key Comics. So, how did you come up with the idea? What are you looking to do with this new publication and kind of your goals?
Yeah, sure. No, that's a great question. I'll try to keep it short, but I'm definitely going to fail at that. So, um, you know, you have when we started doing this, we had to ask ourselves the question of like, okay, if we're going to form a new entity in the comic book space, for the digital age, how do we go about doing that? And understanding, at least in my opinion, that the traditional form of, print is probably not necessarily the best path forward if you want to attract VC financing or institutional financing to have a shot to go up against the giants. And that's really what we're doing. We're
Hmm.
really kind of an underdog story here, trying to make a dent and bring to life something new. So our goal with this company is to eventually be the number one platform for digital native comics and digital comics, and being kind of pioneers in bringing comics into the digital age. And we'll do that by revamping the storytelling medium from the ground up to be truly digitally native, and then adding gamification layers on top of that, which we strongly believe will add and drive further engagement and retention in an effort to be more competitive and in line with leading narrative forms of entertainment, which is video games. And I believe that by doing this, it will position Dream Key to not only capture, existing current book reading audience, but it will ultimately widen our addressable market, enabling us. Hopefully, this is what we're our thesis is to capture a slice of the hyper casual mobile gaming audience,
Hmm.
which has 17 billion downloads, 15 billion in revenue. And for those of you who may or may not be familiar with casual gaming, it's designed around the minimum number of actions for a dopamine hit. So
Cool.
I think, by creating rich stories and rich art and layering authentic levels of gamification layers, I think that could be a winning formula. And I'm hoping that ultimately investors will believe in that vision. And then to kind of close it from a content perspective, our objective would still be to support obviously legacy print as well. I'm a big fan of print. I own a lot of original art. I love traditional art, and I think that legacy print will always be around, and there'll always be a market for it. But as far as kind of original content, we've initially identified kind of our white space as focusing on dark anti-hero themes and stories and characters, to differentiate ourselves amongst kind of the kind of crowded landscape of competitors. And I think there's a lot of touch points to speak to the success and want for that type of content. I mean, on the comic book side, you have Spawn. Like in North America, Spawn is a leading comic book
Hmm.
selling series. From film, you have Logan, Deadpool. You have Peacemaker, Suicide Squad. So there's a lot of touch points that speak to the audience, like or the Batman. The audience
Of
like
course.
dark, grungy kind of content. And I think there's going to be a swing and an uptick in that, especially since we've just had a decade of like kind of sort of goofy Marvel humor. And I think people are now maybe going to be craving something a little bit darker, and even like we've seen a little bit darker with Andor, the Star Wars
Hmm.
series Andor. So that's kind of how we're approaching that. And then I guess I'll touch one more thing. I know I've been long-winded on this, but it's all important points, I feel. Another thing that we're going to be doing with the company is, or kind of a belief in how we're approaching the company is that by along our journey recruiting top talent who I believe are extremely passionate, and allowing them true creative freedom and ownership. And when I mean ownership, I mean shareholders in the company. So like, Ken is a shareholder in DreamKey, Ryan Stegman is a shareholder in DreamKey. And I think, providing that and having everybody rowing in the same direction is ultimately going to create a recipe for creating, what I hope to be the next generation of the world's most badass heroes. And, our goal will be to, capture your imagination so that you can escape your 9 to 5 and hopefully feel like a kid again.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And especially being, coming from a gaming background, like you said, the anti-hero, the tones of the upcoming title that we're going to talk about, Deathshroud, totally has the Spawn, the Venom vibes. It even kind of gives me, like a Darkstalkers type of a feel as well. So I know there was a long-winded talk, and you probably want to, take a couple sips of water after that. So, Ken, how did you get involved with Chad? How did he approach you with DreamKey? Because you're coming from, you've done, like you said, DC, you've done the Trinity, you've done Green Lanterns, the Flash guys. How did Chad come to you and say, listen, I want to create this new company. I want you to be on my team. I want you to be a shareholder. How did that approach come?
Yeah, I mean, when you reached out, it was something I was immediately intrigued by. It was very much that. I mean, I love my time that I had at DC, and I at some point in the future would love to go back and do some more stuff with them. But there's something really different, and I've always heard people say this, but like when you are contributing yourself, you're not just a cog in the machine, right? You're like at DC, I was a cog in the machine, right? And like all artists are, you're the writer hands you the script, and you're part of the assembly line, and which that's great, it's part of the industry, and it's a great way to make a living. But there is a different aspect when you get to put your stamp on it, and you can get to contribute to the story and the direction and just the overall. And in this case, not just the story of Deathshroud, but the company as a whole, which is so cool. So it was an opportunity I couldn't really pass up. And meeting with Chad, he's such a cool guy, and we bonded over the stuff that we loved when we were kids. Like 90s comic books, 90s video games, like current video games, like all this. And he was just hitting all these points of aspects of the things that I loved growing up that aren't that prevalent anymore in the industry. It seems that there's sort of this, I find myself being nostalgic for the type of stories that I liked when I was younger, and there just doesn't seem to be a lot of them. It doesn't seem to be hitting that point as much anymore. So it just seemed like a great opportunity to kind of dive in and kind of flex on the muscles of the badass 90s stuff that I just love. So, I mean, yeah, it was pretty much, it came at a perfect time, and yeah, I couldn't have been happier. It's been we've been working together for almost 2 years now. So it's, yeah, we've got a lot of work done into this. So, yeah, it's been 2 of the best working years that I've had in my career, and hopefully, God willing, it's gonna go for a lot longer. So.
Yeah, I know and you and I have known each other for years, and I've known you more of as a cover artist, but you are really taking the time and now doing a lot of the interiors. You did a lot for the DC stuff, but now it's, you're going to be doing this first time out comic. And we're going to get into Deathshroud in a second. And, I know you have the first 6 issues done, and you're still working on more. So, and your art, and, I've said this multiple times, your art reminds me of Michael Turner, the slick lines, it's so tight, and I'm so excited to see the Deathshroud. I obviously purchased the Indiegogo, went on there, got, Ken sent him the screenshot. I said, Ken, got your cover. Can't wait. So
thank you.
It's definitely going to be a fun ride for the both of you. So again, let's get into Deathshroud. Chad, your series, your baby, let's talk about it.
Yeah, sure. So kind of like what Ken had mentioned, I came at this from inception with the goals of, like we all do, right? Of how can we think long term of adapting this to other forms of media, and my first passion being video games. So, I created something that was inspired by some of my favorite IP, such as Diablo, Destiny, Darksiders, and then on the comic book side, Venom, Spawn, and Greg Capullo's kind of really gritty art style that really kind of flourished, excuse me, out of the 90s, and I just felt that I had a interesting take and fresh take on something that I feel, to what Ken had said earlier, is there's a void in the market for this. And so I think that like Deathshroud is coming out at a perfect time, and I think that there's a big audience for it. So to a lot of probably listeners who may not know what Deathshroud is, I'll give you the elevator pitch. So again, the series is, if you're fans of Venom, if you're fans of Spawn, if you're fans of, you know, Greg Capullo, Todd McFarlane, then this is for you. It's the synopsis for the series is when a special ops mission goes sideways, Second Lieutenant John Azrael should have died, but instead he's transformed into this nightmarish, hellish creature. And the protagonist, John Azrael, soon discovers that he's actually a Nephilim and one of the forbidden children of the angels, and his very existence poses a threat to the established cosmic order. And he soon discovers that there's actually a conspiracy between heaven and hell set to destroy humanity, and he must embark on a mission to save mankind. And there's also a subplot that is kind of more grounded that the readers will also be surprised by if they tune in and pick up the issue.
Awesome. So, like you said, Venom, you said Spawn. Obviously, I'm sure those are kind of, you know, the background. Those are the meat and potatoes of, you know, of Deathshroud. Is there anything else that kind of geared you towards, you know, making this series?
Specifically, I knew that if I was going to actually have this come to life and for people to be really interested in it, I wanted to work with the best of the best. Like if I'm my background, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to jump in with 2 feet and figure it out trial by fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a very specific, this is driven by passion. I have a very specific kind of art and tone that I'm going for, which in my opinion, there's a short list of talent that can really pull that off.
Mm-hmm.
Beacon, you said Michael Turner, like his art is incredible. And I think for this series specifically, as well, like I think Ken is, obviously I'm biased, but I think, you know, Ken is doing his best work, and we have the flexibility that mainstream doesn't, of, you know, that cushion of, well, let's just spend a little bit extra time and let's just, you know, make the rendering that much more badass on this panel, or you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, for me, I wanted to make something that, as an underdog story of, I'm going to come out with a product that is on par with, you know, a top AAA Marvel or DC event book. And you know, this is a basement dream, and we're gonna come out swinging. So to do that, I needed to surround myself with veterans in the space. I'm a first-time writer, but I think, you know, I'll give myself a little pat on the back that I think we have a really great story here, a really great arc. But I think at the end of the day, as long as you have a solid story, art is what is, in my opinion, so important. It's what I pay a lot of money for on my comic collection. It's what I think drives comic book sales. People want cool art. They want cool covers. And again, we have 8 variant covers for our first issue, all of which are AAA talent that people are probably scratching their head like, how the hell did you pull that off?
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's what we want to do with Dream Key, is like every product, we want to be very proud. We want it all to be AAA. And quite frankly, we want it to feel like, you know, that spur that came out of the early 90s of all of the different creations and IP that was just beautiful art. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's really kind of the inspiration behind that.
Yeah, I can definitely vouch for the art side here on the podcast, and people, our listeners, always know Zach's more of the story driven guy. I'm more of the art guy. I go out and buy, you know, exclusive variant covers, 1 in 50s, 1 in 200s, not because of the value, but because of the art style. So, you know, with that being said, Ken, you know, obviously you're one of the guys on the cover. You're doing the interiors. You know, kind of, why don't you tell us, our audience, you know, who else is, you know, dropping covers for Deathshroud?
Yeah, I mean, so we've got Ryan Stegman did the A cover, which is awesome. He also did the back cover for this issue, which is so cool to have him on board and part of this. And his cover is so sick. It's like an homage to one of his Venom covers. We also got Brett Booth, who's one of my good friends, and he did an amazing dynamic cover. We got Tyler Kirkham, again, amazing dynamic cover. In-Hyuk Lee, which I'm super excited about. I got to meet him at Comic-Con. He's got such a cool digital painted style, it looks so real, and he's awesome. We got Puppeteer Lee he did fully painted cover, which that one has a very cool, it's like dark and gritty and gothic looking almost. We got a really cool stylized cover by Kyle Hotz, which is it looks almost like fantasy, and it just gives me very Halloween vibes when I look at it. It's very spooky and creepy, and it kind of leans into that side of Deathshroud a lot. And then we got Bjorn Barnes, who I believe it's Chad, you have to correct me. His is computer graphics, right? Bjorn's. It's
so he creates 3D models, and then he takes it, exports it, and then paints over it in Photoshop.
Yeah. His has a super unique look to it. It's very, very it looks like something that's a real object. It's like a sculpture almost. So
exactly.
Yeah. It's very, very cool. So, and of course, and then I've got my cover. Which is the
best cover.
Pretty cool.
You can say it's the best.
Yeah, you can say it. Come on, it's ego. Let's go.
And then we also have Andrew Dollhouse, who's coloring me on the covers and through all the interiors too. So it looks so good. Andrew is one of the best colorists in the whole industry. He's in my top 3 colorists in the entire industry. He's so good, and he just has such a command of light and the storytelling through the color, which a lot of colorists don't do. He's locked in on that, and he's so good at adding these effects too, like how light interacts with objects in the space. So good. So it really, I think it's the best looking book I've ever done, in terms of the work I've put in, but also the work that Andrew's put in, our connection together. And I'm inking myself, so it's just me and him. It's just the two of us. So in terms of our team, I feel it's the best looking product I've ever been part of, and I'm so proud of it. And it's just the energy and the detail is through the roof. And this first issue, it only gets better. Each issue we've done gets progressively better and better. When I would finish up an issue, I'd tell Chad, I think this is the best one we did. And it was just literally, and it wasn't me just being cockier. It was me being I really because the set pieces get crazier, the action scenes get crazier, the splash pages, everything. We kept trying to top ourselves each go around. So it's really something that I'm super, super excited about. We put everything we had into it. And like Chad said, we had the time too, we weren't under a deadline crunch. We were able to really on my end and also Andrew's end, we had the time to really flesh this world out and make it as beautiful and as badass and as gritty and as cool as we possibly could. So I really, really hope that listeners are inclined to check it out. And yeah, it's a total passion project for us,
Yeah, I'm so excited, and you've been talking about this for such a long time. What's really what's the driven factor for Deathshroud? What really gets you up in the morning to want to go in and be do I want to do this better each month, or is it the character? What kind of drives you?
Yeah, it's just in creating the new world. Like I was saying before about being nostalgic for when I was a kid. I think a big part of that was the 90s seemed to be this era where people weren't always relying on the same IP. There was this explosion through video games, through movies, through comic books, people just creating new things, new things that I was constantly discovering. And just that idea of this is something new. This is a new, cool, badass character that people are going to straight up love. And being able to just build this world around him, and the supporting characters, and the villains he interacts with, and his supporting cast, and it's just being able to just create something new that I think it's going to mean as much to people now, I hope, as things Dragon Ball Z and Ronin Warriors and Final Fantasy meant to me. So I'm just it's that kind of that's what gets me so excited about this whole adventure, and we have so much plan too. It's not just Deathshroud. We have more characters that we have in the works that we've been designing, we've been working on, and God willing, this everyone supports it and people are into it. We've got the really cool characters in the wings that we've got ready to roll. So
So, Chad, what's kind of like the roadmap right now for Deathshroud?
Good question. So right now, as we mentioned previously, so we have 6 issues completed, and we're rolling out. It's a giant size. It's 52-page issues, 8 covers, and we just put it out on Indiegogo right now. So make sure you go support that. You can uh, click
Yeah,
on
we'll
one of our
drop the
social
link for
links. Yeah,
everybody.
yeah. And then from there, we're rolling out 6 consecutive back-to-back issues on Indiegogo. So the first one launched on January 16th. It will run for 40 days, then fulfillment, and then boom, issue 2 will be up for grabs starting April 3rd, and then issue 3 June 2016th. We have the full content roadmap. On our Indiegogo. It's also in our pitch video and several places on our social media. But we wanted to approach the crowdfunding perspective differently as well. A lot of times in crowdfunding, the book may not be complete, and the fulfillment for a lot of times on crowdfunding can be half a year, right, or longer
Yep.
in some cases. So, we wanted to be like, listen, our books are already printed. As soon as the campaign's done, we're rolling into 2. We're using express shipping. We're a grassroots. It's a basement dream right now. So as Ken mentioned, like, we're out there trying to raise investor money to actually execute on the larger vision, and we hope that people can support us during our journey to do that. Like, we're printing locally. I'm actually using a Canadian print shop. We want to offer premium service, so I'm using Purelator to get you your books in like 5 to 7 business days, expressed. So we just wanted to create a really premium product from not just the art and the story and the team, but all the way through packaging and to your door. And I think fans are going to be really excited. And one kind of cool perk that we have specifically and exclusively only for the first Indiegogo that we have running right now is a founder's coin. So it's a 2-inch by 2-inch plated silver coin that's got the Dream Key logo, the year, and then on the flip side, it's got the Deathshroud logo, and each one is sequentially numbered, which is also cool, and it's encapsulated in a plastic case. So that's just something cool. I've noticed that a lot of people are getting it, and I'll be sure to ensure that everybody who's getting one is, on a first come first served basis, and I'll make sure that the numbers line up accordingly. So I'm excited for everybody to start unpacking their packages.
Yeah, I got to say that, like you said it perfectly. I was right there on the 16th when you guys went live, and I think it was the next day or the day after, and I saw you post an update that books are printed. You showed the box, and I'm like, this is awesome. I'm like, I want it's like, I want this campaign to end now just so I can read it.
Exactly.
Like it's like you said, yeah, sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's a year, it closes, and sometimes all of a sudden, something that you funded and it shows up on your doorstep and you're like, oh wow, I pre-ordered this, right? Didn't I? I completely forgot. But you're already in the game. You're ready to send it out. As a comic collector and people that are listening, I'm sure their biggest thing, and of course, someone who's not really been in the space, is shipping condition. They want to make sure that it does, come in, excellent. People are like a 9.8. It's,
Exactly.
it's the shipping price is the shipping price, from Canada. Like, I love the idea that like you said, you want to get it to us quick. It's not going to be like a 1 month thing. It's not going to come in some like flimsy bag and board, and it's going to come all tore up because of the post office. But I like that you're taking the time, and you did all this, previously, and knowing that how much this comic does mean to you and for the company that you're creating, right out the gate. And I'm passionate about this, listening to Ken over the past year and him being on here and following you, Ken, and also the Deathshroud Instagram. So, I can't wait for this to kind of move forward. So, with that being said, with your roadmap, what's kind of your long-term goals, past Deathshroud?
So Ken had actually touched on it briefly there. So for Deathshroud specifically, and just going back for a second to the Indiegogo, what's so important is demonstrating traction and positive reception from fans. So it is important to support us along the way. Make sure you leave, comments, tell us that, what you think. So that ultimately demonstrates validation of what we're doing. But so going back to our long-term goals with it. So first off, we want to build, as you do, an expansive universe. Connected to multiple heroes in their own standalone series. So we have one character already. Actually, there's three, but one character that we have finalized designs for. It's on our website. The character is called Shadow Slayer, and that was co-created with Ken. Ken designed it. It's a very much. If you love Deathshroud, you're gonna love this character. It was also, this was created by from a passion of a video game franchise called Ninja Gaiden, which is an awesome ninja slasher game. And so if you're fans of that video game franchise, you're definitely going to love this character. So and then from there, obviously, our goal is, we have Spencer Walken. He's been in the film and TV industry for quite a long time. He's worked on major projects, getting the Mortal Kombat movie made, Tick Tick Boom with Andrew Garfield. And so we'll lean on him to help shepherd us through Hollywood. And, ultimately our goal is to, get this eventually turned in and adapted into an animation or film. And if we can do that, that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, right out the gate. Just looking at the go ahead, Ken.
No, but I was gonna say, but together though, we need everyone's support. If this seems like anything you'd be interested in at all, like please go to the Indiegogo, check it out, and please consider backing it, because these are our ultimate goals. But to get there, we need your support now. And we appreciate every single person who's like helping us along the way, because you're getting in on the ground floor of like something that's like I said, like our dream to make like a whole new like publisher here with like cool content to just, something that you're going to love and to be entertained by, so thank you so much for everyone who goes and checks it out.
And even if you're, even if you can't support financially, supporting via retweets on social media and help amplifying awareness goes a long way. As it's a crowded space, and trying to break through that noise is challenging. So again, every retweet counts.
No, of course it definitely does. And, I've been sharing it both on my Instagram and the podcast Instagram, as well as Zach, really trying to push it out there. And, having Ken on previously, I know a lot of people messaged me and they said they picked up a cover or two. And you could tell, right off the gate, just looking at Deathshroud, it's definitely, there's a lot of comics that come out and people are always like, oh, this is going to be the next, there's going to be an animation, there's going to be a movie, there's going to be some live action thing. But with Deathshroud, it's more so that, like, it's definitely doable without, being in the space, especially coming from a gaming background. Same thing. Like I spoke to you before we went live. I'm a gamer before I'm a comic collector. So I could absolutely see, John creating himself in that world, becoming Deathshroud, and then the characters that you're branching off into. And I'm really excited to then see, where you guys are going to go, who's going to be, another writer, what characters are going to pop up that are going to then get their own, series, and especially spanning a world. And that's like one of the best things that I love about a lot of the indie stuff, more so than, the Marvel and DC, is a lot of these newer, Boom and Image, they've created these new things, like the Radiant Black universe is like their new thing. Obviously with Boom, you have the Tinian's created the whole, Something is Killing the Children universe. So he's got a couple side projects, but that's what it is. You guys are coming out of nowhere, and you're taking the time and you're including who you want, where you want. And that's like the best thing. It's like it's building a sandbox, and that's awesome for both of you. And I'm so excited that, it just dropped, like you said, on Indiegogo. So please, everybody listening, support, share. There's definitely a lot of stuff going on out there for comics, and I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Back to Ken. Ken, you've obviously, drawn a lot. We've kind of touched upon this a little bit. What's kind of your big thing with Deathshroud over doing the Marvel, the DC, Aspen. I know you've done the interiors kind of. You said you've had the ability to take your time for this, but tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, I feel like I've during the course of this project, it started a little bit before I started working with Chad. Like I started shifting my mindset a little bit on how I was approaching pages, and then with Deathshroud, well, when I started working with Chad, this sort of just kind of exploded into like a whole new sort of like way of thinking for me in how I approach comics. That I used to, and I feel like a lot of artists do, think about comics almost like they're seeing a film, right? And like that is a awesome way to draw comics and to interpret comics, to write comics. It works really well. But I sort of shifted my mindset into like, how do I maximize the medium of comics with Deathshroud? Like, and in the sense that I don't really like the grids, you know what I mean? In paneled grids. And like, I don't like when things are kind of like neatly organized. Like I think that to maximize the medium of comics, to get the most bang for your buck out of it, you can do what movies and TV shows can't do, right? There's a lot of things comics can't do. There's no sound, right? Like there's no acting. There's no movement. So those are things that film and TV have over comics. But the things that comics have over everything else is that you can make stuff look as cool as possible. Like that's the thing, right? Like like a Batman actor will never look as good as like Jim Lee drawing Batman. Like it just won't ever be, right? So like that's the thing is like with comics to me is like I'm really, really leaning into like how do we get the biggest, coolest images, the most frenetic, visceral action and movement and energy. Like that's something I've been really kind of anchoring in on these last couple of years is how do I just pack the page as much with energy as I possibly can. And that was something I got a lot from anime too, was like it just everything just things moving and exploding and kind of like big and in your face, while keeping good storytelling. Like that's not to say you just shuttle storytelling off. Like storytelling, the flow of panels has to work. Like it all has to be there. So like keeping good storytelling, but just amping up the like intensity and visceralness and just like fun is like kind of where I'm at now with like how I approach my art. And I think Deathshroud is the pinnacle example of what I've been doing with that, so.
And with Deathshroud, what's kind of been your background? Like what's been your like go-to where you've kind of watched something or seen something to help you, along this journey, anything that kind of would stand out?
Like for influences, like on how I'm approaching
absolutely.
it. Yeah. Like, I mean, you mentioned Darksiders, like Joe Mad's art on Darksiders and Battle Chasers was like pretty big for me, like that, because he was someone that was able to kind of really get that sort of visceralness, and like certain animes too, like the Street Fighter movies from the 90s, like I've been like watching those, or Berserk, like that's a good manga that has like really cool like energy and like grittiness. And so like just taking all those influences and kind of meshing them together. And like I said, like thinking about the games and stuff that I liked on like Castlevania, like aesthetics from stuff like that are kind of leaking into it as well. But I mean, yeah, it's kind of like a blend of all of that, but yeah, I would say like Darksiders was probably a pretty big touch point for some stuff, like just like capes and movement and stuff,
Yeah. Wow. The Darkstalkers games or the Darksiders and stuff like that those are amazing. But and like for Chad, not really being a comic guy and coming from the comic book, the video game world, where do you kind of see, the next phase as far as, character development? Are we going to, here's actually the question I was thinking about earlier when you introduced a new character. Are we going to see characters that are introduced in Deathshroud have their own titles, or are we going to get, brand new characters in their own title first? Kind of like is their first appearance going to be in like Deathshroud, or are we going to get them in like their own comic book? And at some point there's going to be, we know that we're in this universe.
Yeah. So great question. So right now the approach, and now keep in mind that could shift over time,
Of
but
course.
the approach is to really build a solid story and give them their own mini series,
Mhm.
and have the audience really have the room and to get attached to that character before bringing him over to Deathshroud. So the character Shadow Slayer, his name's Cain Artemis. His story actually takes place before Deathshroud becomes Deathshroud, and by the end of his story, I've set it up so that it's a perfect way in which it feels really natural why they would cross paths, and ultimately, I guess I don't want to touch on spoilers too much, but I'm trying to assemble a team is what I'm
Okay.
what we're gonna do. But I
All
do,
right.
to answer your question, miniseries, I think, in my opinion, is a great way of giving it room to breathe in an authentic way of telling them like an origin story, and then bringing them over to Death Shroud.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
And we have Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have the Shadow Slayer art on the Dream Key website.
Yeah,
Correct?
you can
Yeah,
see
we do.
you can see what he
So
looks
yeah.
like.
Yes, you can
Ken
see
Gilbert.
he's oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it's such, I mean, if I do say so myself, I
Ken,
think he
talk about his
looks
weapon.
badass. Yeah, yeah, he has this hilt. It's a hilt, right? And like a sword hilt. Like think like a lightsaber hilt type thing, right?
okay.
But it can shift from different modes for what he needs. So the standard mode is like a giant oversized sword made of fire, right? Like it's like, so it like expands out and it's this giant sword made, like imagine like Guts' sword but made of fire, right?
All
Then it
right.
can shift to double-ended, kind of like bow staff, right? Kind of like Darth Maul, where the flame comes out both ends, like Darth Maul's staff, right? So it's like a ninja staff made of
Changing
fire,
up.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then he can shift it to the staff sort of curves like a bow, and then he can like draw fire arrows, just kind of like manifest the fire arrows and like
Unlimited fire
launch fire
arrows.
arrows. Yeah. So it's a bow, a bow and arrow, and a giant sword. All of it made of fire. All of
And
it to kill demons, and it's
exactly. And
badass.
imagine that in a fast-paced Ninja Gaiden style video game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
fact, you had said that you had mentioned something earlier about like from a writing perspective, approaching comic books in certain ways. And Ken can definitely attest to this. There was purposeful elements in which I wrote into the story of like, okay, let's world build here. This is going to be useful if this ever gets turned into a game. Like this is, the Earth hideout, and here's where you could make potions, and here's like a great tutorial section. So there's a lot of like heavy lifting done should it ever be adapted to like, oh, we've already really thought out some pretty important parts of that play a role in a video game. So that's those type of elements are thought in all of the writing. And I don't know if necessarily it'll be completely obvious, but I've definitely given some splash pages to like specific sets. That even just I think from an immersion perspective is cool of certain characters like layers, and it's like cool, like you really get to experience like their bat cave, so to speak, things like
Mm-hmm.
that.
All right. Do you guys plan on going to any Comic Cons this year to obviously promote it, or esport conventions?
Good question. We'll see. I don't know. So the answer is we'll see. I'm not sure. I know it's been kind of crazy with COVID, but I think we're kind of out of that now. So we'll see. If so, probably it would be one of the bigger ones, like either like New York or something like that. New York is actually pretty close. It's closest for me, being up in the Great White North.
Were you
Close
located again in Canada?
Toronto. So
Okay, so you're right in Toronto.
That's a quick flight opposed to Cali.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm actually considering going up there for Niagara Falls Comic Con, which is actually in June. So, sometimes those are the ones that you got to start with. Start with like a 2-3 day show. That's that, and then
bring some Deathshroud copies.
Yeah, you just get your feet wet.
Exactly.
And I got to play devil's advocate, and I'm sure you're going to get this because if you set up, people are going to ask you, what to the haters. If someone says, "Well, this is Spawn," what's your kind of like what's your, what's your retort to that? Because I'm sure someone's going to say they're going to hear your pitch. They're going to say, "Oh, that sounds awesome, looks good," but this is Todd McFarlane doing Spawn.
This is what's really interesting to that to me is,
and I'm not a hater, believe me. I'm just trying to.
It's all great. I trust me. I see this question or I see this comment all the time, and honestly, I'm actually surprised that. And I know, I'm being sincere. I'm actually surprised that is the IP that they feel that it's closest to. Because in my opinion, it's actually not. Like, so yes, I would be lying to say that there's definitely, not influence of Spawn. Of course there is, but actually, like, our character is the son of Death, and the way that in which, Death plays a role, the way that we're dealing with heaven and hell is very different. Like, I think, without spoiling too much, I posted something on social, this amazing panel of arguably one of my favorite characters in the series of an archangel, and I wrote, friend or foe, and kind of in the synopsis that's on our Indiegogo is, there's a conspiracy between heaven and hell, and they want to wipe out mankind. Like, why is that? Why would heaven and hell, align? Aren't they supposed to be rivals? Like, what's going on there? So I think I'm actually like a big fan of Spawn. I've read, all of Spawn, and what I think that, you're going to experience very differently than reading. Like, if you were to pick up Spawn #1 today and pick up Deathshroud #1, the immediate first thing that you're going to know the difference of is, first of all, the art is just as impressive. I love Todd McFarlane, but Ken's art and the covers that we got, the art is rivaling that level of talent. And then two, I know people have short attention spans, but at the same time, paced well enough. Like, I'm throwing shit at you like this. Every issue is high action, high momentum, and pushing the story forward. So you're not bored of like a lot of medium shot panels. I'm doing purposefully low panel count to just let Ken go wild on art. And I'm writing it in as a fan myself of like, and this isn't knocking Todd McFarlane. I'm the biggest fan of Todd McFarlane, but one of my frustrations as a fan of reading Spawn is it took 80 issues for Spawn to like really be a badass, and Spawn got his ass kicked a lot. And I wanted this character to be a badass, and as a fan, and I'm not saying everyone may agree with me, but as a fan, if I'm buying Batman, I want to see Batman beat up bad guys, and my character beats up a lot of bad guys. But there's a great story, there's a great structure, it's a great story, and I know that I make sure the flow of storytelling and action is an appropriate ratio. But this is high momentum, and it definitely doesn't let up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I want to piggyback on that. Like, Todd obviously is a huge influence, like, to me, like, right? Like, if you look at the art, like Todd McFarlane, I mean, when you were talking about influences before, like, I forgot to mention, like, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Brian Stegman, all these 90s style comic artists are a huge influence on it. That being said, like, I do think that, like, maybe, like you said, if someone hears like the overall elevator pitch and like gets one glimpse of him, he's like, oh, he's like a badass with a huge cape, like, and they think, oh, Spawn. But I do think this has a significant, like, once you get in the book, it's significantly different. Like, it leans way more into the fantasy than Spawn did. It leans way more into the action than Spawn did. Like Spawn was a very it was tonal, it was very like moody and edgy, and this definitely has elements of that, but we specifically lean harder into the video game high energy, high action end of it. Like, I think this is a very fun book. Like if people have been listening to us, they may think it's kind of dark and gritty, and it is dark and gritty, but it is very fun. Like, it leans heavy on the fun aspect of comic books, and there's a very, like we said, a very strong focus from us that each issue that we do, there's big forward momentum in the story. Like, things happen. Like, you're not going to get an issue from us and be, oh, this was just people sitting at a table talking for 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's the word. That's the biggest thing with comics these days is for whether it's Batman, Superman, if it's Spider-Man and the Marvel side, the X-Men, you have to read 4 issues before something actually happens. And, nowadays you get 28 pages and they're ads and nothing. And you're like, I just paid $4 or $5 depending on the book, and my story didn't go anywhere.
That's not the case. That's not the case with this. There's each issue something happens, and that is a throwback to like the 90s style when each issue like I feel
it meant
like
something.
Yeah, no, like a story arc today in the mainstream, and this isn't a knock on, it's just how it's evolved. Is it feels almost like issues are the act breaks of like a 40-minute television show between commercials, right? Like each issue feels like this 6-minute kind of chunks, right? Whereas like where we approach this, where each of our issues felt like the whole episode. It's like an episode's worth of momentum and character development and plot and all of it in each one. Like things happen, Deathshroud upgrades, he gets hurt, he fights, like things happen. That his supporting characters, which we haven't even got into, we have a great supporting roster of his fiance and his best friend, and they have a whole thing that they're dealing with, which Chad had alluded to, which is the more grounded side of the universe, which is his fiance is a reporter, so she's kind of like sniffing around all this zany stuff that's happening around her life now. So there's a lot of elements to it that are going to be a lot of fun for people to dive into.
So people are going to be able to like pick up different characters and maybe enjoy those characters. And,
Exactly.
Same thing like, people love Mary Jane. People have grown to know that character. And, obviously in the Batman universe, there's tons of Gotham characters that people love. And, you can be able to pick up, reading these characters and, have a little bit of a background. So that's awesome.
One of the things that you'll get from it's just it was a personal pet peeve of mine of like, I wanted to make my female character, so the fiance of John Azrael, not a damsel in distress. Like she's, beautiful. Ken does, beautiful female art. And, she's, our Mary Jane, but except she will pick up a gun and bash you in the face if she has to. Yes, sometimes there's bigger things that happen that require Deathshroud's help, but she's not afraid. And that's something that I think is cool. And actually, I won't say more because that will spoil it. But
oh no, please, don't. I want to read this when it drops in. By the time it comes out in like I guess April will be the launch time. I definitely don't want to know too much. Seeing a couple posts on Instagram.
We'll be shipping. So it ends. So right now it's live from the 16th. I could be off by a couple hours, but give or take, it's like almost midnight on the 24th of February. And the books are already printed. Yeah. So before that, I'm going to start like prepping. And then the goal is to fulfill, all backers within 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the total. And then, everyone, the whole point of express shipping is boom, you have your book, you read it, and then, hey, I want issue 2, and we're ready to go.
Pre-order. Yep.
Yeah.
Nice. The first issue you said is 52 pages. Are you continuing that trend, or is it going to drop in page?
It is. It's going to drop. So it's going to go back. So it's going to drop to 24, but all of the future perk listing will reflect that significantly. And the future Indiegogo price listing will be, it'll be cut in half.
Okay. Yeah, and I know that's something that people may check out on the Indiegogo, and let's talk about the Indiegogo before we kind of close out. Again, Indiegogo, go ahead, just type in Deathshroud. You definitely can check out our link. We'll have it in our description. But talk about the Indiegogo, pricing. How many days? You said it's about 35. I think it's like 35. It's actually 30, 40.
So it's actually 40 days. I launched it on midnight on the 15th. So so 16th, and we'll run for 40 days, and we're going to keep that pattern. We'll keep that pattern for all of the campaigns going forward. So that gives me about a month of fulfillment. Again, the objective is that we'll have all of the books printed and ready to go, so that as soon as I start fulfillment, people will get their books quickly, and then it can be ready for the next issue that's coming up. The pricing right now, given, keep in mind, this is a grassroots startup. This is not a big company. This is a basement dream. We're using local printing. I'm not printing overseas to cut costs. I'm using the highest quality paper, thick paper stock. This is a perfect bound issue. Again, I want to give somebody a product that they would get from an event book from Marvel or DC.
Mm-hmm.
So, because of low print numbers, that was reflected in our decision of what we're doing. But we're also hopeful that people understand that crowdfunding isn't a retail store. Like, for those of you who may or may not be familiar with what Indiegogo or Kickstarter is, it's a platform that helps creators or entrepreneurs execute on a greater vision. And any small startup, your startup costs are significant. We're not printing 100,000 issues, so
Mm-hmm.
we're not printing an issue at $1. So things are vastly more expensive, and we got talent like Ken and Ryan.
Oh, of course, you gotta pay, Stegman and
I'm not
and
saying
Inhuckley
I'm not singing a sad tune. I just want to share transparency.
oh, of course,
that we're not cutting corners, and this is a local North American operation here.
Mm-hmm. No,
Yeah.
I completely understand. Ken, I don't know if you're caught up on episodes here on the podcast, and for our listeners, we had Eric July at the end of last month talking about his book, Isome. He created the same thing. He created the Rippaverse. If you don't know Eric, go check out that episode. And, his book came out and it was $30, and he's here in the States, and he did several different covers. But with you, I completely get it. You got to pay artists, you got to pay your, everything. I think that's the most important thing is, quality product. What do you just print run, I guess? Are you printing it based on how many, or do you actually have like a cutoff?
Good question. So basically I've forecasted, I'll essentially print on demand. So I sent it to printers. We print, what I forecast. I think that will reach based on, we're small startup. We're just building the brand as we're going. So unless something drastically changes, unless I get on the Joe Rogan podcast,
Let's go.
I think we're going to be good with our forecast, and I don't foresee that being an issue. But because the print shop is an hour away, should I need to campaign 2 took off and we have 2,000 backers, that's not an issue for me to, drive, phone them up. They already have the plates, like it's already good. So it's not an issue should we need to print more. But I'm pretty good at forecasting, and I don't think that we're going to be running into that issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unless Joe Rogan, unless I get on Joe Rogan.
Well, yeah, then we're going to second print shop and
yeah.
And I do want to tell everyone that Chad sent me a couple of the issues for me to have with the cover, and they are very, very high quality. Like, it is a very premium product. It is not just like, the flimsy paper stapled together and just thrown out there, all coming all crinkled and stuff. Like, it is like, it's packed super nice. Chad's packing and shipping them all himself. So it's he's a collector. He's a comic book collector. I'm a comic book collector. So we know how important it is to have that.
Well, do you want me to talk to you how I package it? So I'm gonna post an update on the Indiegogo. Actually, just it sucks. I think they used to allow you to do updates with videos, but they don't now. So it's just a still image. But so everyone is also going to get a cool bookmark with a Puppeteer Leary's cover, and then on the flip side, it's got the Dream Key logo, and then you get this like premium kind of velvety sticker of the Deathshroud skull. But because as a collector, I know how people are. They, to your point, like, they don't want dings or creases and things like that.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I put them between 2 pre-cut curated pieces of cardboard with and it's sleeved in with like masking tape on it, so that it's like floating in the center of 2 pieces of curated cardboard, and then each, if you bought 2, then I would replicate that for each one, just to give that added level of protection. And then, and then, like I said, it's each one was also, because of the size, was like a screen wrap also on top of the book that's printed. So it comes like this plastic film that's encapsulating in it, and then I'm putting that inside of a sleeve. You'll get your bookmark, you'll get your sticker, and then it's going to be securely packaged in between two pieces of cardboard inside an awesome, sturdy, rigid mailer.
Awesome.
That with custom Dream Key tape to add that extra little.
Yeah, and the book itself, like,
yeah,
no, and like the book itself is, like I said, really high quality paper, and it's square bound, so it's got the, it's like, it looks almost like a mini graphic novel. Like it's so cool, and it's
nice.
Double sized stuff. Yeah, it's super cool, man. It's I can't wait for people to get them. Like everyone who backs it, if you're thinking about backing it, please go check it out, because everyone who backs is going to really love the product that they get. And we're so happy about that. And we're so grateful for everyone who has backed already, and anyone who's thinking about backing. Biggest thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because like we said, this is the startup dream here. So we just appreciate everyone's support.
Yeah, absolutely. From before you guys kind of give us our closing words, and I definitely want to just piggyback on you, Ken. I definitely recommend it for our listeners. Please, go out there, support people like Chad and Ken, because you never know, where this could be. Obviously there are like the big three, and Boom and IDW and everybody, but when you get to be able to create your own universe, and you want to escape, like Chad said, your 9-to-5 job, this is the way you do it. You read something new. You don't just go pick up a Batman book or a Spider-Man book. So, please definitely go check out the Indiegogo. Like Chad said, that it's $40, but you know what? You're not getting 25-ish, 25 pages. You're getting a nice double thick comic. I cannot wait to see it. I'm sure, behind the scenes, Ken may show it to me after the podcast just to check it out. But I am super excited for this when it comes out, and I definitely can't wait, going forward. So, guys, closing words, Chad, Ken, thank you guys so much for popping on here. It's been an absolute blast. Chad, go ahead. Final thoughts on Deathshroud, support it.
Yeah, just recapping it. We have, as we mentioned, we have 6 issues completed. The first issue is now available on Indiegogo. It's a giant size, 52-page issue number 1. And please, follow and connect with us on social media, and we're going to be rolling these out back to back. So, join the ride now.
And then where can they find you, Chad, as well?
On Twitter at Chad Larrson. And same with on Instagram. And then for Deathshroud on Twitter, it's just Deathshroud. On Facebook, it's Deathshroud Comic. And on Instagram, it's Deathshroud Comic.
And my buddy Ken.
Cool. Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you, first of all, for having us on, for talking about this. It's been a long time coming, and we're just so happy to tell people about it. So thank you for giving us the time to talk about it. And thank you to everyone who has supported and everyone who's going to check it out. Like I said, eternally grateful from the bottom of our hearts. Like, you're helping the dream come alive, and we can't do this without you. So thank you so much for all your support. And you can follow me at VKenMarion on Instagram and at VKMarion on Twitter. And I've been posting a lot of Deathshroud content. There's gonna be more to come, like some sneak peeks and stuff. And yes, please follow us on the socials. Please tell us what you like about the book, or thoughts about the book, or anything like that, or any questions you have. Please follow us on both us personally and the Deathshroud accounts too. So for all the updates.
Yeah, we'll have everything in the description. And again, like I said, I appreciate both of you coming on. For our listeners, please, one more time, definitely go check out Deathshroud. If you can't support this one, definitely at least do some sharing, retweeting it wherever you can. And then going forward, please check both Ken out and Chad stuff. I mean, like they said, they have been really posting it a lot. I've been supporting it. Zach has been supporting it and the podcast. So, I appreciate both of you guys. Unfortunately, Zach couldn't be here. I'm sure he would have asked some more questions as well. But let's get out of here again. Season 3, episode 3 of the Comic-Con podcast. And we'll catch you all next week. Later.